Okay, Mr. Phobes here. I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible and show you how to clean up your and correct your um, color wheel project here. So one thing that you might want to do before you get started, so you're going to take a good photo of it and you're going to download it to your desktop. One of the things you might want to do is go to the color wheel project and let's just open up this so this is under the color wheel. We'll be using this later. Let's just open up this JPEG and look at it. Um, what's important about this are the formulas. So if you look at yellow, pure yellow is just 100% yellow. There's no cyan or magenta in it. Magenta is 100% magenta and cyan is 100% cyan. So now let's look at the secondaries. So we know to make blue, we mix cyan and magenta together and you mix them equally at 100% and 100%. So that's true for all the secondaries. For the intermediates, the mixture is 100%. So this is cyan green, so it'd be 100% cyan and 50% yellow. So that's true of all the intermediates. They are 100% of the primary that it's leaning towards. So yellow green would be 100% yellow and 50% cyan. For the red magenta, it would be 100% magenta and 50% yellow. So those are the formulas that we need to know in order to correct our color wheel. Okay, so let's go into Photoshop and we're going to open up your image that you've downloaded. So we'll go File, Open, and there it is right there. So this was actually a pretty clean image. When I shot it, the light was just right. So I don't have to do a lot of work on this. One of the things you want to make sure is that you have your color open and your layers open. You don't necessarily need properties, but you need layers and color. And when you go to color here and you have it open, um, it may look a little bit different than this. There's different sliders that may be open. In older versions of Creative Cloud, you might have to hit something that says options and then open all this up. But on this newer version, this is the 2017, um, we would have CMYK sliders set up, all right? So you see those sliders, all right? Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit of cleanup here first. So the first thing I want to do, you're probably going to see shadows and fallout and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing we want to do is take the magic wand tool and we'll select this. And if you can see, it's selected everything around all the color area, right? And the tolerance is at 32, all right? So we're going to change this to perfectly white. So we're going to go Edit and we're going to go Fill. And then you'll have a variety of choices here and you want to select white and then hit OK. And you see that turns it to bright white. Then let's hit Command D and that will deselect it. Now if you look at this, there's some kind of annoying things in here. There's a little stray brush mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the um, eyedropper tool and I'm just going to make sure I've got white in the palette. Then I'm going to go to my brush and I've got it set at about 42 and I'm going to clean that up and I'm going to clean that up. Okay, and I could come through and clean this stuff up, but whoops. So I'll just hit Command Z and that'll undo it. So I don't really want to spend a lot of time doing it because it's really about the color. All right. Let's look at the image size here. So we're going to go to image size. All right. So this came off my phone and it's huge. So what we want to do is let's get it down to a smaller dimension. So we'll make the height of our image 1200 and then the width will be a little smaller. But let's change the resolution to 300. And then let's make the height 1200. Now, you should have cropped it to uh, the extent of the picture frame in your phone. If you didn't, you could go ahead and crop it. You know, if you wanted to be safe, crop it at 11 by 14, but then resize it. All right. Now, I'm just looking at a couple of things here before because I'm going to make a duplicate of this. I didn't do a very good job of cutting this out, and I wanted to make it look really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the rectangular marquee tool here. So when you open it up, you'll see there's elliptical, all this. So we're going to select rectangular, and I'm going to start right about here. So start a little bit lower. I could have started over at the other side. Now I can bump this down a little bit, that selection. That looks pretty good. I probably should have made it a little bit smaller. But what I want to do is I want to basically trim it. So what I'm going to do now, what's selected is this area in here. So I'm going to go select inverse. So basically what it's done now is it's masked this, and I'm going to come back with my white that's in my brush, and I'm going to make it I'm going to make the hardness 100%. Let me make this a little bit smaller, and now I can, because that's masked off, I don't have to worry about it being really careful. I just come, and what it does is it basically paints everything outside of the selection. All right, and that cleans it up really nicely. So now I'm going to hit Command D. Okay, now that I've got my background white and I've trimmed this, I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'm going to unlock this, and then I'm going to drag this to the duplicate layer. So I've got two layers here. I'm going to rename this one, and I'm going to call it corrected layer. All right, and then I'm going to start correcting this. So first thing I want to do is just take some measurements here. So if I take my eyedropper tool and I select it on yellow, right, it should be 100% yellow, and it is, but it's got some cyan and magenta in there. Now that could be a couple of things. It could be that the monitor is not calibrated correctly. It could be when you are using your phone, it might have been reading it a little bit on the warm side. So if I wanted to, I could go through and correct all of these, and I don't want any black in it. Okay, so now that's what's in my palette. Okay, so if I go to the bucket tool and then select that, boom, it turns it to bright yellow. You see that? So now I can go around and double check these. So we know from our color wheel here that orange should be 100% yellow and 50% red. So let's check that out. So I use this, the eyedropper tool, and look at this. I'm pretty darn close, except there shouldn't be any cyan in there, right? And again, that could be the impurities of the pigment, a couple of things. It should be at 50%. You don't necessarily need to correct all of these exactly. That would be a lot of work. But if they seem really off, you might want to correct them. Now, I'm looking at these three here, and they're very, very close together. So I certainly want to make these look a little bit better. So I can tell my cyan doesn't look correct, right? Look at that. There is 100% magenta, but this was really probably this should have been a red magenta. So I want to take any of the yellow out, and I want to take any of the cyan out, and I don't want any black in there. Okay, so now I go back to the bucket tool. That looks much better. There we go. That looks better. See, now I'm going. Now let's look at the muted ones. Okay, so if I wanted to create this muted yellow, it should be 100% cyan, but it should also have some of the blue in it. So let's check that out. Okay, so look at this. All right, so it's 100% yellow, and then we know to make the blue, it has to be equal parts cyan and magenta, and you see it's a little bit off here. So if I wanted it to be 10%, um, let's it actually looks pretty good at let's let's make it let's make them both 20. All right, no yellow, no black, and then let's go to the bucket tool, and that was pretty darn close, so that's good. Let's check this one here. Okay, now again, um, it should be equal parts cyan. I'm just going to eyeball this, but we'd want, maybe 30%. It should be 100% yellow, but then closer to 30%, or let's say 40%. Okay, now watch what's going to happen here is when I do this, it's actually going to be maybe a little bit too dark. So it's a little bit on the dark side. Let's check our neutral gray. So the neutral gray, if we look at it, they should actually be 50, 50, 50, and 50 if we want it to be. So you can see it's a little bit, you can look, it's kind of cool. There's less yellow in it. So um, if I change this to 50, and no black, all right, now what's in the bucket tool, that's a totally neutral gray. It looks actually a little bit warm, but that according to our scale here is correct. All right, this actually looks pretty good. Now what I could do is if I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, because it looks like it's a little dark, I'll go to my what are the HSB sliders, and what that stands for is hue, saturation, and brightness or value. I don't want to change the hue. I want to leave the saturation, but if I want it to be a little bit lighter, this is like adding white to it. So now what's in the bucket tool is something a little bit lighter. Okay, so I could do the same thing. I want to bring this up a little bit, so let me go to the brightness and bump that up. Now that's getting closer to that. Okay, good. So that's basically how you do it. So what's nice is that you can then, on your corrected layer, you can click off it and you can see the layer below and see the corrections you've made. All right, so what you're going to do to save these is you'll go to the corrected layer and you'll go layer, and then you'll go export as, and we're going to make it a JPEG, and here's the image size. That's perfect. So we'll say convert to RSGB. That's the color mode we'll be working in, and then we'll go export all, and let's call this, so that one's called corrected layer. We'll go save, and then let's go to this layer and we'll go layer, export as, and it's going to be a JPEG, and just make sure it's the same size, and then you're good, and go export all, and then we'll call this maybe we'll call it and then we'll go save. Okay, so there you've got your two files now ready to post into Blackboard. That's it.